The morning haze over London had barely lifted when Ben Kingsley's car pulled up to the ITV studios. Inside the building, the familiar buzz of production was already in full swing, crew members weaving around light stands, assistants balancing clipboards against takeaway coffees, someone shouting about a missing microphone in the dressing room hallway. It was the kind of organized chaos that Lorraine Kelly thrived in, the kind she had spent decades mastering. And today was supposed to be simple: a respected actor, a gentle interview, a short conversation promoting a small but earnest indie drama. Easy television, but from the moment Sir Ben stepped out of the elevator, something felt off. He looked immaculate as always, tailored slate gray suit, crisp cufflinks, that signature calm that made him seem slightly detached from the world around him. Yet there was tension lurking in his posture, a carefulness in his gaze. His publicist walked a step behind him, whispering quickly, almost anxiously. "Just remember," the publicist murmured, "Lorraine might dig into the tabloid rumors. Avoid it, pivot back to the film. You can't let this overshadow the release." Ben gave a slow, acknowledging nod, as if agreeing not with the advice but with the inevitability of having to use it. As they entered the green room, a production assistant practically skidded to a stop before them, breathless from running between segments. "Sir Ben, lovely to have you. We're just finishing the cooking demo. Bit of a mess in the studio, ignore the flour. Makeup will be right here in a moment." Ben smiled politely, though his eyes flickered briefly at the mention of mess. He didn't care about flour. He cared about being prepared, about being asked something meaningful, something worthy of the film he had poured himself into. But he knew morning talk shows had their own priorities. Meanwhile, Lorraine Kelly was already in the studio, rehearsing her gentle, upbeat intro for the camera. She was a pro, warm, familiar, comfortably authoritative. She glanced over her note cards, tapping the edges against the table with practiced precision. Makeup did a final sweep across her cheekbones before she read through the intro again, this time with her trademark smile. "Sir Ben Kingsley joins us today to talk about his powerful new film." She paused, eyes narrowing on the next line, the one her producer had slipped in late last night. "The one about rumors." She sighed almost imperceptibly, but she didn't remove it. Controversy, if framed with a soft enough smile, made for good TV. In the control room, producers watched the clock carefully. 2 minutes, someone called. "Where's Kingsley? Why isn't he on standby?" "He's coming," another assured. "He's in wardrobe now." But Ben wasn't in wardrobe. He had just stepped into the hallway outside the studio, adjusting his cufflinks, shoulders squared. The moment he crossed onto the set, the atmosphere shifted. Lorraine looked up, smile wide and bright. "Sir Ben," she greeted. He offered a courteous bow of his head. "Good morning, Lorraine." They shook hands, hers warm, his firm but brief. A subtle stiffness in the gesture made two producers exchange glances. They weren't sure who was more tense. As they sat down, the audience settled, the floor manager raised a hand, and the countdown began. 3, 2, 1, and then they were live. Lorraine opened with her signature warmth. "We are absolutely delighted this morning to be joined by the legendary Sir Ben Kingsley." The audience applauded on cue. Ben smiled, small and polite. The first few questions were exactly as expected, about his preparation for the role, the emotional demands of the story, the philosophy behind portraying such layered characters. Ben answered with gentle precision, his voice even and thoughtful, the kind that made viewers lean in a little. Lorraine nodded along, genuinely charmed despite herself. This was going smoothly, almost too smoothly. Then her eyes flicked down to her cards, landing on the line she had debated keeping. Her smile tightened. "So, Sir Ben," she said lightly, in that teasing morning show tone, "there were rumors on set that things got a little intense. One source said you had a few heated moments with the crew. Anything you want to clear up?" Ben blinked once, slowly, as if giving himself time to absorb the question fully. "Intense," he repeated, the single word almost philosophical. "I suppose one could say I'm committed. But difficult, I would challenge that wording." Lorraine lifted her brows in playful skepticism. "Well, one crew member claimed you walked off set because a lighting cue annoyed you." The audience chuckled, expecting a funny denial. Instead, Ben sat up straighter. "Ah, sources." He said the word softly, but it cut with unmistakable intention. The great invisible chorus of modern storytelling. A few people in the audience murmured, unsure if this was humor or something else entirely. Lorraine pressed the smile wider. "Oh, Come on, Sir Ben, we're just having a bit of fun. Fun, he echoed, with an almost surgical precision. Yes, though I'm curious why we focus on gossip when we could focus on the film itself. The air shifted. Producers in the control room leaned forward. Lorraine's smile faltered for the first time. Well, it's just morning telly, she said, attempting to lighten the mood. People like to hear the behind-the-scenes stories. Do they? He asked. His voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. Or do you? The audience gasped lightly. Lorraine blinked, surprised he had chosen to spar so openly. She tried to regain control. Sir Ben, this is all in good humor. Nobody's attacking you. I never said they were, he replied, but there is a difference between humor and trivialization. Lorraine set her cards down, folding her hands carefully. All right then, how would you like me to ask the question? Ben's jaw tightened, though he maintained composure. Ask about the craft, ask about the message of the film. Ask about the work. Lorraine inhaled through her nose, controlled, professional, irritated. But we also have to ask what viewers are curious about. The moment the red light above the camera faded and the commercial bumper music hummed through the studio, the entire set seemed to collapse into a frantic whispering chaos. Assistants hurried in, makeup artists drifted near but didn't dare approach, and producers huddled like startled birds, flapping through options that had already slipped out of their control. Lorraine Kelly stayed seated only long enough for the floor manager to call, "We're clear." Then she pushed her chair back with a sharp scrape, standing so suddenly that her mic pack tugged at its clip. What was that supposed to be? She demanded, her voice firm but low, biting off every word so the microphones wouldn't pick it up. Because that certainly wasn't an interview. Ben Kingsley rose more slowly, adjusting the front of his jacket, his posture immaculate even in tension. I answered every question you asked, he said, his tone soft, measured, precise, each syllable intentional. I simply redirected when the questions lacked relevance. Lorraine let out a short, humorless laugh. Lacked relevance, Sir Ben, you walked into a room with cameras and an audience. You're here to promote your movie. And on morning TV, that means talking about the behind-the-scenes stories people actually enjoy hearing. Ben lifted a brow. There's a difference, he said, between behind-the-scenes stories and fabricated drama. A few members of the crew exchanged uneasy glances. The energy in the room was crackling, two professionals with decades of experience, neither willing to concede ground. The floor manager stepped forward, gentle palms raised. Let's all take a breath. Lorraine cut him off with a sharp gesture. No, I'm not letting this slide. She turned back to Ben, her expression tightening. You came on this show and decided to lecture me on journalism. I won't be disrespected on my own set. Ben maintained his composure, but his eyes sharpened. I did not lecture you. I expressed disappointment in the direction the interview took. Same thing, Lorraine snapped. Ben's publicist, who had been hovering anxiously in the background, finally stepped in. Lorraine, Sir Ben is very committed to portraying the film accurately. Oh please, Lorraine said, waving the publicist off. Don't hide behind the film. He was perfectly calm until I asked one simple question. She pointed lightly at Ben. And then this one decides to turn philosophical. A few crew members whispered, amused despite themselves. Ben heard it. He ignored it. I am not immune to humor, Lorraine, he said quietly. But humor should not require misrepresentation. Lorraine let out a slow exhale, trying to steady her tone. Look, we have 2 minutes before we're back on air. Let's decide how we're ending this, all right? Her producer rushed forward, headset askew. Lorraine, we need to wrap the interview. Maybe pivot to the film and go straight to the baking segment. No, Lorraine said flatly. We're not continuing. She faced Ben directly. I'm not finishing an interview with someone determined to make me look like a tabloid vulture. Ben blinked. Once. Slowly. I don't think you need my help with that. The room went dead silent. Even the camera operators froze, hands hovering over equipment controls. Someone in the back stifled a gasp. Lorraine's mouth tightened into a thin line. So that's how it is? She asked. Ben tilted his head. You asked a question. I answered. You insulted me. I reflected your approach. Lorraine took a step closer, her heels clicking sharply on the studio floor. If you want to leave, go. But I won't have you accusing me of cheap television. Ben's expression softened just slightly, not in apology, but in something closer to a weary patience. Lorraine, he said, I respect what you do. I truly do. Morning television is not easy. But respect is not a one-way street. Lorraine crossed her arms. So now you're the victim. No, he replied calmly. I am the guest, and a guest deserves proper treatment. The producer glanced helplessly at the countdown clock. 90 seconds until they were live again. We need to move, he whispered urgently. If we're cutting the interview, we need to prep Lorraine's transition. Lorraine lifted her chin. Prep nothing. He's leaving. She gestured toward the edge of the stage. We're done. The publicist stepped beside Ben again, voice trembling. Sir Ben, perhaps we should just. Ben raised a hand, silencing him. Then he looked at Lorraine, not with anger, but with a quiet, steady disappointment. If that is your decision, he said, then I will respect it. He buttoned his jacket, slow and deliberate, gathering what remained of his dignity like a cloak around him. As he turned to leave, Lorraine called after him, not yelling, but with a sharpness that sliced through the air. And don't pretend you didn't come in here already on edge. You were looking for something to be offended by. Ben paused at the edge of the stage. He turned, just slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. I came in here, he said, hoping for a meaningful conversation. What I found was something else entirely. Lorraine exhaled sharply, cheeks flushed. The crew watched, transfixed, as if witnessing a rare celestial event, a controlled professional meltdown broadcast not to viewers but to everyone behind the scenes.